So you want to know about knee pain and how to rehab your knee. Well, in today's episode, we're going to be talking about knee pain, knee rehab, knee prehab, all the good stuff. And we're going to be talking a little bit more specifically about my own personal experience with knee injury due to stretching through pain that was in my knee, and something that's really common with people. So if you want to know how to avoid hurting your knee from stretching, then stick around. You're not going to want to miss this one. And make sure you stay right to the end of the episode, because as always, we're going to reveal the biggest mistakes that people make and give you some really key insights into this topic. All that and more coming up.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.
Hey everyone, in case we haven't met, my name's Rad Burmeister. I'm one of the co-founders of Unity Gym and co-creators of the Unified Movement System, UMS, formerly known as the FMS, where we teach you how to nourish and move instead of diet and exercise. And this is Phil White. He's our resident physiotherapist and a long-time friend. How you doing, Phil?
Very well. Had to start the morning with some sunrise beach volleyball, and it was glorious.
Yeah.
Good.
And you did it without your socks on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The weather is really warming up here in Sydney, and for the first time I didn't have numb feet, which is, ideal.
That kind of sounds like, having sex with your socks on or something. Playing volleyball with your socks. Well, playing volleyball with your socks on? Is that a thing?
No, it's a thing. That you wear these like geeky sort of sand socks, like neoprene, that just protect you from.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's not like just your footy socks or something like that.
Just wear,
yeah. So they're cool. They're cool socks.
Well, they're horrendously uncool, but that's part of the fashion.
All right. Well, let's. Okay, cool. So, what are we talking about today? We're talking about knee pain and specifically related to stretching. So what we're going to do as always, we're going to get out on the gym floor. We're going to take you through some stuff. I've got the mic today because apparently I'm the person that knows the most about this topic. So we're going to get out on the gym floor, show you some mistakes that people have made, that I've made, and show you some of our more advanced knee rehab exercises. Then we're going to come in here and talk about the key discussion
keeping on
points.
progressing from what we've done earlier in the week. So the exercise will be a step-by-step, and Rad will show some mistakes.
So the exercises we're doing are progressions, but the mistakes we're doing are to be avoided. All right, so here we go. I got to get used to talking. I haven't been the one talking on the gym floor for quite a while. So what we're going to do, well, first I'll demonstrate the. Are you in the mood to demonstrate? Or?
In the mood.
All right, it feels in the mood. Here we go. Look out, it's a role reversal here. So what we're doing here is a mid-shin height front step up with a high bar barbell position. So off you go. You can do a couple of reps. Perfect. Yeah. So all we're doing is just basically just challenging the knee a little bit more by two ways. Number one, elevating the distance, of course, and number two, by using a barbell instead of dumbbells. By using a barbell, it does two main things, unless you've got anything to add to it, Phil. The first one is it raises the leverage point, raises the center of gravity. So that changes the dynamics of the way the weight distribution goes down through the knee. And also, it makes it less stable, because when your arms are down here by your side with weights in them, that's much easier to balance if you're losing balance.
Also, we just haven't used weights yet in our earlier progression, so this is just trying to reintroduce a bit of resistance to the exercises, which is like the perfect way to continue progressing as we...
yeah, that's right. Because from this point here, we get people to move into squatting and things like that. So we want people to get used to having a barbell on their back so that they can transition from these unilateral conditioning exercises into proper squatting, high barbell back squatting and front squatting and all that good stuff. Besides that, everything else is pretty much the same as the other things here. We just want to make sure that the knee is tracking over the toes. We don't want the knee buckling inwards. We don't want the hips wobbling side to side. We want to keep your body upright, driving through the knee and the hips so that everything stays square.
That's pretty much it. People going all the way up and then all the way down?
We usually just leave the foot up there and just do a step and then back down. And we do like what we were doing yesterday, where if you keep your toes up and turn the toes out a bit on the back foot, so you just touch the heel to the ground and then you go back up. Yep. So you can see how that's challenging Phil more straight away, because now what he's doing is at the bottom of the range of motion, he's actually keeping the quadriceps loaded, all of the muscles in the leg that are creating this movement are staying loaded, okay, where there's no relaxation. Awesome.
Much more challenging.
Yeah, much more challenging, yeah. So the reason why you just move the foot out of the way like that, like I got Phil to, is just so it clears the step. If your foot's facing forward, it's kind of an awkward way to, get the foot up and down.
The important thing to keep in mind with that is you don't want to then twist your whole body.
That's
while
exactly
you're doing
right.
it. So
It's exactly right.
hip straight.
Just hip external rotation and keep the pelvis straight, yeah. What was the next one? Oh, that's right, yes, the glute ham raise. So this is a brilliant exercise. Now we're really starting to get out of the kindergarten and into primary school. So for the glute ham raise, what Phil's going to do is basically he's going to lock his feet under an object like this. There's machines at certain gyms where you can do this, but we like to do it the old school way. And what he's trying to do is keep his hips as far forward as he can. Now the distance that he's going to keep his hips forward is dependent on his own strength. And then he's going to bend at the hips, so he's going to create forward flexion and try and touch his forehead to the ground, okay? So all the way down, and then as he comes up, he drives the hips forward, okay? Now if you do another rep, Phil, and as you come up, just let your bum go back, so just do a really crappy rep. See how his bum's gone back now? Keep the bum back. See, it feels too good, he can't even do a bad rep. So see when his bum goes back now, and if he keeps that bum back there, there's really not that much going on in the glutes, but watch what he does now. If he keeps the hips forward, now there's maximum activation of the hamstring and the glutes. So this is an amazing movement for many, many reasons. Number one, it's a closed kinetic chain movement. Closed kinetic chain movements for the hamstrings. Closed kinetic chain movements have been proven to have a great carryover to sport and to physical activity, so they're really, really good. And also, it's a really good way to eccentrically load the hamstrings and glutes, and to get a feel for what's right for you, rather than just having a weight and you're stuck with that weight. You can play around with it and feel it.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really good. This is not quite the same as a Nordic hamstring curl, which it looks pretty similar to. So if you're seeing something that looks like this, but they're straightening out the thighs on the way down, then that's a different exercise that we're actually going to progress to. So just for those watching at home, if you've seen something that looks like this, but it's not quite the same, then this is where you start. It's actually more of an isometric contraction for your hamstrings, because your hips are staying in the same place. You're not going down with your hips. And so it's a really nice way of introducing that load, that position, which we can then progress onto later on.
Yeah, absolutely. So now before we go, so those are your two exercises to do for knee conditioning. So as always, they're agonist and antagonistic movements. So do you want to come over here, Richie, so you've got better light? They're your two exercises. What I'm going to talk about really quickly now before we go in is about the idea of stretching through pain in the knee in a way you can cause injury. I actually got a flap tear to my medial meniscus from chronic overuse of trying to force internal hip rotation, not knowing that I had something called FAI hip, femoral acetabular impingement, which makes, in my case, it makes internal hip rotation almost non-existent. So I was trying to force something that was being locked up at the hip area. And what happens is, so if you try to push internal hip rotation, so you can see on my hip, people that are good with hip internal rotation, when they go like this, their knee will go down to the ground. If you look at me, when I go, that's as far as I can go without actually moving my pelvis. Whereas I've seen people keep their bum flat on the ground and one knee will just drop down to the ground. But what I was doing was loading it up, so I was putting load through my knee and trying to force through this internal rotation, and I was really getting in there. It's not so much the movement that I'm demonstrating here. That movement there, the 4-point stretch, is a really good stretch for you if you don't feel pain on the inside of your knee. It's a very, very good, it's not a stretch, it's more of a loaded mobility, loaded stretch for the hip. But yeah, the concept of putting lateral force on your knee, and the same thing can happen when you're doing external rotation. So if I'm trying to, stretch my glutes out like this is a really classic glute stretch, and you're forcing it, trying to get more and more and more, and you start feeling pain on the outside of the you should be feeling pain. An example of, because one of the points that we're going to talk about when we get back into the room, an example of good knee pain for stretching versus bad, or I shouldn't say knee pain, there's no good knee pain. Acceptable discomfort in the knee versus bad knee pain is when you do a hamstring stretch. I remember when I was developing my hamstring flexibility, and I was far less flexible than I am now, and I would do this and I would get really bad discomfort at the back of my knee. But what that was the discomfort in the tendons of the hamstrings and the calves crossing the knee. And that wasn't a bad thing to be working through because I wasn't going to a point of pain, I wasn't causing myself injury, I was just feeling the sensation in the tendons there. But what I just described before about this pain in the side of the knee from lateral force, because so my hip's not going to rotate anymore. The only way my knee's going to get closer to the ground is if the knee laterally flexes. It's not a good thing to be doing.
Yeah, and I think one of the key things that it makes the difference there is when you're doing that hamstring stretch, it's the muscles that are the limiting factor there. Whereas when he's doing these internal rotation stretches, it's now the passive structures that are the limiting factors. So in the hip, there's a bony block there because he's got the FAI, which we've talked about in previous episodes, but we can go over a bit again. But it's the bony block there, and then the leverage caused by pushing that foot into the ground that means that the force is now coming into the knee, and now it's the ligaments and the meniscus that's going to be the limiting factor rather than the hamstring stretch where it's the muscular stretch that's the issue. So
yeah, absolutely. Do you want to go back in the room? Yeah. So, and I didn't know this. This is something that when I was trying to develop my flexibility, I had no idea about FAI hip or femoral acetabular impingement, or that I had it, and I thought that I just needed to stretch harder. And we've talked about this a lot, and we are actually going to go back to doing a couple of weeks of stretching and mobility video series for you guys again pretty soon. But something that we've talked about a lot in the past is this idea of only stretching to the point of discomfort, not stretching to the point of pain, but to relate it to knee pain, to relate it to knee issues, because people often say to us, you know, I feel pain in my knee when I do this stretching. I'm going to just recap on what I've just said. Lateral pain, like when you're feeling pain on the outside of your knee or the inside of your knee there, where there's really not a lot of muscle going on there at all, that is something that I would personally avoid 100%, and definitely if it's associated with external or internal rotation. Those are the ones you've got to be really, really careful of. Whereas, you know, discomfort at the back of the knee is an acceptable thing when you're doing something like a hamstring stretch.
One other thing that you can feel is like the discomfort will usually quickly resolve with the muscular stretching ones, but that joint pain, especially if you start to see any sort of like any swelling, or if it's a pain that really lingers, that's the kind of defining factors there. So, yeah, but definitely the either side of your knee or deep within the knee, or another really. A common one, which I guess is probably quite relevant to the progression we did today with the hamstrings. So getting onto that kneeling position, actually getting that compressive force through your patella. If you've got a angry patella, then if you're doing lots of quad stretching where you're just wrenching your leg back as far as you can, you're starting to get pain underneath that kneecap rather than through the quad muscle, then that's another example of when...
And what's that? Is that an onset of tendinitis?
Well, it can be a few different things. So it can, if it's more up in the top of your patella there, then that can be a tendinitis. That can be, but it'll generally feel a bit more like a sort of stretchy pain. Whereas if it's underneath your kneecap, or just below your kneecap, and especially if there's any sort of swelling around it, then it can either be like the actual joint itself, so the joint surfaces where you have some cartilage on the underside of your kneecap there, which can be aggravated if you continuously are compressing without having that sort of load tolerance that we've talked about before. And then the other thing is you've also got bursas under there. So bursas, which we talked about in the shoulder, are like these cushion-like structures which just allow muscles to glide over bones without getting aggravated against the bone. So if you continuously compress a bursa over and over again, then it can just get quite inflamed and sore as well.
So what does it mean when you have fluid in the bursa?
Well, that's exactly it. So when you have these cushions, their job is to try and, I guess, provide a bit of cushioning and a bit of...
And what are they made out of?
Geez, you're going into...
Yeah, right, like, okay. So it's not cartilage, it's not...
basically.
It's its own...
It's this kind of like fluid-filled sac that ideally is just at like a low level where it's not kind of changing, like it's not getting in the way of things, it's not changing sort of mechanical properties, but when it gets really inflamed, then it can be space-occupying and start to like make movements.
And back to fluid in the bursa, when they say you've got fluid in the bursa, what does that mean?
Fluid in a bursa is exactly what I was just talking about, where the bursa actually gets bigger, and that's just a response where you kind of keep compressing something. It's trying to like protect the structure from being compressed all the time, and so it gets bigger and bigger to respond to that. And yeah, so that's that, and it keeps getting that inflammatory process. We'll just add more fluids to it if you keep aggravating it. That's why you kind of want to let it settle down. And
do you remember that month ago when I was telling you that I was getting discomfort here under my? So if you can see, I'm pointing to just under my patella, which is my kneecap, on the medial side, which is the inside. I was pointing there, and I asked Phil what that likely is, and you told me it was likely fluid in the bursa.
Yeah, so you've got one that goes underneath your patella tendon.
Yep.
There.
And that's completely gone now. Having this conversation has actually made me realise that I haven't experienced that for a couple of weeks. And I remember what I basically did was anything that caused the pain, I didn't stop doing it, but I just deloaded the intensity on it and kept going, which is the general sort of guidelines that we give for that kind of, for a basic kind of injury, and it works. You know, I'm fine now. So we've actually touched now on the key discussion point from today's episode number 3, which is the relationship between quad stretching and knee pain. Is there anything else that you want to go a little bit deeper into that?
Yeah, no, I think that's just that's the really common one. That's when you've got aggravation underneath your patella, whether it's the cartilage, the joint space, or those bursas, then that's going to be fairly aggravating if you push through that. And so, but people often think when they have like a tendinopathy pain, so the top there, that I guess they should stretch and stretch and stretch. Like people always come in thinking like, oh, I haven't done my stretching. Like that seems to still be the what people think makes everything better. Whereas I'd suggest if you're getting more of that patella tendinopathy, then you'd follow the guidelines that I've talked about for other tendinopathies, which is it's a load tolerance issue, where you want to build up strength rather than just stretching it all the time. Like for anyone who's always just stretching their quads, I'm wondering like, you know, why are you doing that? What's it like? What are you trying to achieve? If you're a gymnast or a contortionist or something, then fair enough. But usually, if you're getting pain through there, it's more about a load tolerance issue. You just got to start to train it like you would for your sport. Okay, sweet.
And the other ones that you described from under the patella, like the fluid in the bursa or cartilage or anything like that, would you recommend a different approach for that?
So with all sort of passive structure pains we've talked about before, basically they're there to they're kind of, I guess, your like last resort supporting structures, and your muscles are your front line who are going to be there doing like the dynamic scaffolding of the joint. So your passive structures are likely going to be sore if your active structures aren't doing a good enough job sort of protecting those end ranges. So if you've got this sort of end range brought on pain where you're going to the, like you're either kneeling on it or you're going into sort of full range stretch and that's sore, then that's probably a sign that throughout your activities you're not dynamically stabilizing well enough that you're aggravating the joint, because it's just relying on the passive structures rather than the active.
Yeah, right. Cool. Awesome. All right. So let's move into the other key discussion points from today's episode. So the first one is that we're going to talk about my personal experience with internal rotation stretching and FAI, which we went into out on the gym floor, but I'm just going to drive this home. I'm just going to wrap this up for you. This is my personal experience, okay? If you're trying to develop real mobility, and you do it to the level that I have over the past 5 years, where I was very determined to increase my flexibility and mobility, and I've been very successful with it, but unfortunately along the road I did have a pretty nasty injury, an injury that for a lot of people would potentially mean surgery. Surgeons would quite often say, yep, you're going to need to get surgery on this, especially if you go to an old school thinking surgeon. For me, I was able to successfully rehab it so that now I can do almost everything that I was doing before. There's a few things that I've just looked at and reflected on and thought, is this really, am I getting much out of it versus the risk, the risk versus reward. But yeah, just make sure that if you're internally or externally stretching, especially doing loaded stretching, and you're feeling pain on the inside or outside of the knee or deep within the knee, then I would stop straight away, go and see a physio or a physical therapist and get diagnosed and figure out what's going on there before you continue down that journey. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'd say just the reason with so you've talked about you had a flap tear, and when they definitely do surgically intervene is when it starts to become like when you get locking of the knee, so you actually can't straighten or and that's sort of the big difference there. Like there's so many different tears of the meniscus that I've talked about before, but basically if you're getting to the point where it's like you actually can't straighten your knee because there's something that's like physically blocking it, then that's
That's
a
it.
definite like go and see someone about it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I wasn't there. Where I was is that I was experiencing pain through certain movements, especially internal hip rotation when I was loading it up. And anyway, there we go. Okay, our second key discussion point for today is high risk stretches and the importance of lateral force management. We've spoken about that. The other stretch that I haven't mentioned that can be quite risky like this is the loaded middle splits. So when you do the middle splits, there's two ways that you can do this. Now, the active middle splits or loaded middle splits is when your weight is in your feet and your bum's not on the ground. And if you externally rotate the feet a little bit and plant the soles of your feet firmly on the ground, it will actually externally rotate the hip, and it will change the forces so that the force is more pushing this way rather than pushing laterally this way, which is much, much, much better for the structure of the knee. So that's one thing to do. But yeah, so if you're not doing that, and if you're doing your loaded middle splits where you're on the inside of your foot, so your foot is turned that way, which means you're really turned in laterally and you're feeling pain on the outside of the knee or the inside of the knee or the middle of the knee, I'd be stopping that straight away and looking as to how you can improve your technique.
Yeah, especially if you've had like when you've had an MCL tear, I guess recently or in the past, then like that's going to be really aggravating if you're going into that split-like position, because you just the MCL is a medial collateral ligament, so it's on the inside of your knee, go kind of straight down, and then the LCL is on the outside of your knee. And so anytime you've had injury to those structures, and if you've had one in the past, often they can just be a bit more easily aggravated. So if you've had that sort of history, then that's a potential sort of like, and which is not to say you shouldn't do it at all, but certainly just like gradually work into it, provide some load tolerance, like introduce that load but don't push it. And then
and all of this, like if anyone, you know, I really want to be beating the drum of repetition here by saying to you guys, if you're not following a program that is progressive in nature, that has the long-term long-term strategy in mind, like the UMS online coaching that we do, then I wonder how valuable the program that you're following is, or how valuable your training is. If you're just picking pieces here and there and just trying this and then trying that, and you're finding that you're getting injured, that's one of the reasons why there's so much really good science and research and decades of experience that goes into good programming. And you want to make sure that if you're going to be putting time into training and you want your body to be performing optimally, that you're following a progressive approach to training, so that you avoid all these things, you know, and you're...
I just want to hone in on that last point about the MCLs. If it is more of an acute injury, especially like within the last sort of 3 months, then don't stretch it. Like give it time to heal properly and work with the physio about that. So just to really clarify, it was if you've had it quite a while in the past, then it's probably going to be a bit more angry. But if it's a recent injury, you definitely don't want to be stretching it while it's healing.
Yep, awesome, cool. So, listen, guys, if you've just tuned in, I can see we've got a whole bunch of viewers and only one like. Is the like button not working, or are you just not liking us? Hit the like button, please. It means so much for us. I cannot tell you how much 2 seconds of your time does for us. I would really appreciate it. And leave us a comment. Let us know your name and where you're watching from, so we can give you a shout out. So what we're going to talk about now, I'm very quickly going to say, if you have any questions about this or anything that we do, please put them in the comments section, because once I get through what I'm about to get through now, the show will be over. And we want to answer your questions. We want some interaction with you guys so that we can help you out. So please put a comment, let us know what you need, and hit up that like button. So let's get into the big mistake that people are making is around what we're talking about today. Is ignoring or pushing through knee pain when stretching is a common mechanism for knee injury. It really is. It's something that a lot of people talk about, how they only experience knee pain when they stretch. They don't feel it any other time. So it is a common thing. Although flexibility is extremely important for high performance, you must understand your body and stretch within your physical limitations. This is the biggest mistake that people are making. We're seeing so many people that are, stretching to a point where they cause themselves an injury, and I'm a walking example of it. Okay, I'm no exception to this trend that we're seeing here.
Yeah, and that's really informed the way that now you're stretching that, as we've gone through in previous weeks, about sort of your active stretching approaches where you're building that sort of strength towards that end range instead of, and that's, as I was talking about before with your ligaments and your passive structures, is your like last line of defense supporting your joints, and your active structures are the ones that are ideally sort of taking your joints through the full range of motion. So with this sort of active stretching approach, the loaded stretching where you're building muscle contraction, which will allow your body to kind of get used to these at end range, then that's going to unlock range while providing really good structure to that end range. So
yeah, man, that's so true. Like our approach to mobility and stretching at Unity Gym is pretty much solely to do with my pursuit of flexibility, because I'm the one that's pursuing it more than Richard and Yanni. And what I've learned about the importance of developing strength in that end range and load tolerance versus what I would have done before 5 years ago for the whole earlier part of my life, the 35 years I was alive, which was just passively pull my legs as far as I could get them and withstand it for as long as I could, and it never produced good results. So that's a really good point that you've said just there. So the key insight for today is stretching is a common mechanism for acute injury of the knee. So when you stretch, you shouldn't feel non-stretch pain in the knee. Remember that pain is counterproductive for flexibility training. Learn how your discomfort limits and never stretch to pain. Learn to know your discomfort limits and never stretch to pain. And we get a lot of people saying, how do I know? And in all honesty, my best answer is you need to experiment. And you basically need to, like when you stretch and you feel what you'd call discomfort, but then the next time you try to do the same stretch a couple of days later or whenever it is, you feel that you can't go as far and you're feeling real discomfort now. What you thought was discomfort was pain. You've stretched too far. And in my personal experience, if you're training without pushing your body too far, then each stretch session, you should be a little bit better than the last one. And that's something that I am learning the hard way. I've had a lot of people tell me this before, and only in recent times am I able to really capitalize on that. Even up until maybe only a year ago, I was still pushing myself too far, and I would do one stretch session and I'd feel like I was, this far off the middle splits, and then I'd do my next stretch session and I would be that far, and I would, if I tried to go even a tiny bit further, I'd feel like I was going to tear the same muscles that were allowing me to go, that much further. And so now I don't do that at all. I recognize what discomfort and pain is, and every session that I'm doing is a little bit better than the last one.
Yeah, and I think just another way to sort of hone in and figure out what that non-stretch pain is if you do like a gentle a stretch where, like your hamstring stretch, where you feel that sort of muscular pull, you generally will have you'll have try it out and do it gently, and you'll feel that just general stretch pain. If you stretch it more intensely, that same pain will just amplify. But also with these stretching motions, if you push this a little bit past that, you still have like a springy end feel of like a muscular resistance. Whereas what you're going into, where you're trying to push your hip into a position where it's actually got a bony block, and then that, because you've got a bony block up here, now the force is going down into your knee, and then you've got that extra leverage of your foot pushing into the ground. Now you don't have that sort of like muscular end feel, that stretch kind of sensation. Now it's like you're trying to push against something that doesn't have the same sensation as that muscular pull, but also it doesn't have that end feel of that little bit of extra bounce that muscles have. Ligaments don't do that. They have a hard blocked end feel, and bony end feels will be the same. So that's just a way that you can kind of try and wrap your head around what we mean when we say that non-stretch pain.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Phil. So let's have a little look. We're going to, we haven't got any questions, so I'm going to go into the comments and emails that we've had over the last 24 hours. So Lisa from California has emailed Yanni and said, thank you for the great knee information. I am currently trying to rehab a very sore knee from what I believe is just an overuse injury from playing racquetball. I believe my body was not ready for the constant twisting and pivoting motion from the weight transfer when hitting the ball. I have now taken some time off the court, about 3 weeks, to take my training in a different direction to see if I can strengthen some of the active structures around my knee in hopes that I can again be a part of our local racquetball team. I'm so glad you touched focused on the need to keep moving and training versus just rest and ice? Any chance that you will make a knee rehabilitation program like you are doing for shoulders and hips? Again, I really enjoy learning from you all. Can't wait for tomorrow's episode. Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks for the great feedback. Yeah. And you absolutely can count on us making a knee rehabilitation program. We basically just see what people want, you know, by doing these shows, and there's been so much interest in these topics, so we absolutely will. The shoulder rehab program is going live tomorrow, so if you've been hanging out for that one, grab it tomorrow. It's going to be part of our Friday Frenzy, which means you're going to get about a 90% discount with a whole bunch of added extras. It's going to be amazing value. After that, we'll do the hip rehab program, so that'll be probably next week, and then the week after that will probably be a knee rehab.
Yeah, so just on this particular situation, like racquetball, it's not really a thing in Australia, but I looked it up and it's kind of like squash.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like you're on a running around on a hard surface, and any sort of sport where you're using just kind of one hand to hit, so with a racket you're hitting with that one hand, it means that you always have a pivot foot on the other side and you're kind of pivoting, so that is always going to be more challenging on your knee because you've got a sport that's not totally symmetrical, and then you've kind of got these twisting motions as well. So it's definitely a challenging sport. Though I have a very similar experience with playing ultimate frisbee competitively for 11 years. You got the same thing where you're throwing on one arm and then you're pivoting sort of through that left foot. So with that, it's really key to understand that, like, you're going to be, if you're just playing lots and lots of racquetball, then one side is going to develop sort of a certain type of strength from a certain type of stepping load, whereas the other side is going to have different unique challenges. And I guess when you look at, like, is it Rafael Nadal's arm, where he's got like one giant, right arm, or his hitting arm, and then the other side is not. So your body does adapt to what you spend loads of your time doing. So for someone who is doing these sort of unilateral, so one-sided sports, it's so key to then when you're going into the gym, is looking at unilateral movement and saying, like, hey, am I as strong or in on the one side as I am on the other? Am I as flexible on one side as I am on the other? Because when you your body responds, like, you get load tolerance from doing activities, and so if you're going out and doing one activity where you're constantly loading one side, then you've just got to come back into the gym and then start to build up the strength on the other side. Otherwise, you're going to just exacerbate the issues.
I love it, because that goes into another one of the biggest questions that we always get here, which is, you know, I'm totally unique. My two arms, two legs and body is different from anybody else's, and I do this sport. What's a specialized program that I can do that's going to help me? And the truth is, you're actually not as, okay, I'll clarify this. You're not as unique as you think when it comes to your body. We've all got two arms and two legs. We've all got a bicep and tricep that controls elbow extension and flexion. And there's only so many good ways to train those muscles, you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, when you do play a sport like what Phil's just described, it is really important to understand that you don't need, like, these specialized, you know, racquetball swinging programs. You need something that is going to balance your left side to your right side. And there's some really good ways to do that, and a hell of a lot of not so good ways to do it, but the amount of good ways to do it aren't as many as you'd think, you know.
Yeah, I think, like, you need that general strengthening program, but then understanding the context of your sport and also the load management related to your sport. So if you're playing racquetball once a week compared to 6 days a week, then that's going to be quite different about how you program in your strength and conditioning training there, and the sort of demand, like, and also for how long have you been playing and what kind of level do you want to get to? Do you just want to kind of train in the gym to be for injury prevention, or are you, you know, trying to compete at nationals and you need to get more explosive, more, you know, so that really changes the periodization of the program. But the actual exercise you're doing is all about just, you know, learning to support your joints, getting those good movement patterns on the single leg, you know, shoulder stability, all the stuff that we've gone over. Like, it'll be exactly the same exercises. It's just a matter of, figuring out your goals for your sport and your injury prevention, and then working towards that.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so we don't have any questions coming through on the live show. So if anybody, guys, for those of you that are watching, I can see we've got a bunch of viewers. If anybody has any questions, please put them in the comments section and hit the like button, please. It really helps us. So we're going to get into the comments that we've had on our videos in the last 24 hours. So Jim Poindexter, thanks for tuning in again, brother. We love the love that you give us. Jim is one of our regular watchers. And Jim has said, on June the 1st of this year, I fell 20 foot off a ladder. Ouch. I broke my femur in 4 places.
That's a good effort.
Yeah, solid. One for every 5 feet. My rehab consisted of sidestepping off a step that was about 4 inches. I progressed to the movement you demonstrated today of stepping to the front. Within 8 weeks, I was doing this off 6-inch step, and my knee started, I can only imagine that you're about to say, started to feel better. Unfortunately, it's been cut off from the way that we've printed it.
No, it started to hurt more.
Started to hurt more.
Hurt a lot, and he's wondering whether he progressed too early.
Yeah, I would say yes, you've progressed too early. Progression, I'll tell you my experience, and then Phil can tell you what he thinks. My experience of progressing with injury is a to and fro thing. So something will feel good and you'll do it for, in my personal experience, when something feels good, I would like to do it for a week or so, like repeat the same workout again and see if it still feels good, and then I'll progress it. And then if it starts to feel bad, I'll try it maybe one more time. If depends on what the scale of how bad it felt. If it was just a little bit, I'll try it again. If it feels bad again, or if it felt really bad the first time, then you have to try and find a different way of progressing. You have to figure out, did I go from a 4-inch step to a 6-inch step when I could have gone to a 5-inch step? Or did I increase the weight from 5 pounds to 10 pounds when I could have gone to 7.5 pounds, whatever it is, and just try and figure that out.
Yeah, for sure. So this was stepping down that was causing him the issue, was it?
Sidestepping, yeah.
So sidestepping.
I think he means
and it
like
was like
the sidestep.
stepping straight down.
No, I think it just means the sidestep.
It is the sidestepping, and
Yep.
then he progressed to the one we were doing today, which was the.
Oh, yeah, okay, yep.
Yeah, so basically when you're stepping down off the step, the things to look at, as we talked about, with the level hips, the knees tracking over, away from your big toe. But the other thing you can think about is where you're putting your weight through your foot. So if you're going up onto your toes and sort of leaning forward, and you're getting more of that knee bend, and that's going to just put more pressure through the actual knee. If you're stepping, if you're kind of sitting back more into your hips, you're putting your weight through your heel, and then you step down, then that will load up your hips more and you might feel it less in your knee. So there's kind of different things you can play around with there. Certainly, you continuing with the regression that you were able to do, that's all well and good, but if you've done that for a really long time and you're not getting anywhere, then just play around with those parameters of where you're putting your weight, where that weight shift is. And I think you'll find if you put your weight more through your heel and take it a bit more through your hip, then that'll de-load your knee and you probably feel a bit better. That can be quite hard if you're standing really far back on the step. So if you bring your, even having your toes hanging off the edge, that'll kind of force you to put your weight through your heel, and you might feel a difference there. So play around with that and let us know how you go.
Yeah, awesome, cool. Okay, PMB Fit has commented on our press to handstand, epic press to handstand workout. This is one of our most popular videos. I'm working on my mobility and flexibility a lot these days, not just building muscles. It's helped me a lot to improve my skills, straddle planche, straddle press, it's a handstand, etc. Being in my 30s, I have to tread carefully on my training because the DOMs are no joke and may lead to injuries if you don't know. Yanni, that's cut off again. Can you help me out with this comment? Sorry guys, for whatever reason, the way it's been printed today, I'm not getting the full comments and I want to help you guys out. So I'm actually just going to see if I can bring it. Here we go. It's all right. I got it here, Yanni. Okay, so let's just have a quick look. Being in my 30s, I have to tread carefully on my training because the DOMs are no joke and may lead to injuries if you don't know what you're doing. By the way, these kinds of videos are awesome. Nice tips. Thank you, PMB Fit. And what you've said is really, really good. You do. I'm finding, I'm in my 40s now, and I'm finding that I have to tread more carefully than I did in my 30s. And I'm finding that whenever I approach my training like I did in my 30s or definitely my 20s, which was I would just come into a workout and I would tell myself what I was going to do, irrespective of how I felt, and I would just do it and deal with the consequences. And I'm not doing that anymore now. What I'm doing now is I'm making sure that everything is progressive. I'm tracking all my progress with a program card, and I'm making sure that I'm watching my numbers go up steadily week by week rather than just going into a workout and saying, oh, I'm going to do this today. And then if I take a week off, I will just straight away, I'll drop about 10%, maybe even 20% of what I was doing, see how that felt, and maybe within one workout, I'll get back to where I was, but I won't start at where I would have if I'd been consistent. I'll drop it back at the start of that workout, see how it feels, and then work my way up and see where I get to at the end of that workout, and then that's what I'll judge what I'm going to do the next workout on. So that's really, really good stuff there.
Yeah. And just a point on DOMs, like if you're adding more sort of eccentric exercise, like if the lowering phase of your lift is longer and with more weight, then you're going to get more DOMs. Generally, if you're doing more concentric contraction or less time on the eccentric, then that'll. So if DOMS is a really limiting factor, then that's a way that you can just tweak your exercises so it might not cause quite so much.
Okay, so now we are down to, I'm just going to, okay, here we go. Okay, so RT from Virginia, another regular viewer. Thank you so much for all the love, RT. From Virginia, USA, saying, I absolutely love the way you guys go through the regression-progression series of the exercises. Too much exercise advice out there just provides a one-size-fits-all demo of some exercise, but most of us will not be at their level of performance and we get no idea how to start. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's really cool to see that what we're doing is reaching you guys out there. And I'll be honest, you have Yanni to thank for that. If it was for me, I'd just be showing you how good I am on these videos. But Yanni's the one that keeps saying, no, we have to make sure that we're giving value to people and we have to figure out what people want, not what we want to give them.
And that's something that really excites me about working here is that with physio often you do kind of get the, you'll see physios, I've seen physios in the past where you do all the really basic stuff and then you kind of don't get anywhere exciting. So it's really good working with personal trainers where I guess I can probably show the how to start and then you guys are really helped me develop where to take it.
Yeah,
so
that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's a good pairing.
Awesome. Okay, now next we've got Hot Doggity Dog 12 YT. Hello, Hot Doggity Dog 12. That is a wicked name. Saying, hi, do you have any vids on hamstring rehab commenting on our knee pain exercises, quad and hamstring? Yes, this video series that we have just done this week is very, very good for hamstring rehab. The hamstring is is associated with knee pain, which is why we've shown exercises for the quadriceps, calves, glutes, and hamstrings. So have a look at this series of videos that we've done this whole week. And also keep an eye out for the knee rehab program that'll be coming out in the next couple of weeks because that is going to be all about hamstring rehab.
Yeah, totally. Definitely, if you follow the progressions we've done this week, then that will get you back to a certain base level. Now, you got to think about what your hamstring injury was. If it's a tendinopathy versus a muscle tear, then you have a bit of a different approach. So any sort of detail you can give on that is really helpful. And also, you got to think about what you're getting back to doing. So if you're going back to trying to sprint and have a lot more agility, then that's going to be different for your progressions versus someone who's trying to do gymnastics movements where it's all about holding in one position. So again, giving information on what your goals are is really helpful.
Cool. And last but not least, I'm just going to say this one more time because I can see we do have a bunch of listeners on here. So Karina, I can see you've commented. Thank you so much. I'll get to your question in just a sec. But for those of you that are watching, please hit the like button and let us know your name and where you're watching from so that we can give you a shout out and also answer any questions that you have. So Karina, thanks for tuning in, Karina, long-time viewer and part of our online tribe. She's saying you guys are a great team. Good to have Phil's.
We cut the dead weight with Yanni.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, this is the dream team here now, isn't it, Karina? Really. Good to have Phil's unbiased experience and knowledge with my good looks. Thanks for pointing out my good looks.
Not sure if it says that,
no, it doesn't say that. I just added that there. Yeah, thanks, it's the dream team now. Look, we'll make sure we let Yanni know that he's that the show's better without him. So last we've got RT again from the US. I'll second, this is on the hip pain, how to progress glute strength. I'll second the request by your listener toward the end of the session about wanting more on groin/upper adductor work. Well, you're in luck because next week we are going to be doing a series on how to develop better groin mobility and hip mobility for the press to handstand and teaching compression strength again. So it's going to be a whole week on that stuff, and I've got some really cool stuff about exactly what you've just said for the groin and the adductors, about teaching this concept of increasing tissue tolerance at the end range so that your body can control those ranges that you're going in so that you develop strength and flexibility together.
Yeah.
It's going to be good fun.
Probably good timing because I'm away for 3 days next week from Wednesday through to Friday because I'll be up at a conference. So when you get into those hardcore gymnastics moves, that's probably where my expertise is.
Yeah, perfect, man.
Finishing,
That sounds good. Okay, well, Karina's saying, my great looks too, thanks. Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. As always, we love the love. Make sure you watch tomorrow. If you're not on our email list, you're not even going to get this. But tomorrow we are releasing our ultimate shoulder rehab program, and I say that with absolute confidence. I have rehabbed one of the worst injuries I've ever had in my life, a slap tear, torn supraspinatus, fluid in the bursa, and degenerative joint disease, or what do you call it? Arthritis? Osteoarthritis? Yeah. This is what the MRI report said. Clearly that didn't come from the injury. That's obviously something that happened from a lifetime of chronic masturbation. But I got Richard. So anyway, that's coming out tomorrow. So for all of you porn lovers out there, you're going to want to get your hands on this.
Oh dear. Bring back Yanni.
No, sorry guys. I can't resist a little bit of a pun. It's going to be an amazing program. It's going to be released tomorrow. You guys will love it. And until then, I will see you all tomorrow.
Health is about performance, not just body image.
You better be willing to accept what you're going to have to do to get there.
We'll start focusing on movement goals, strength goals, flexibility goals.
When you nail that skill, it's there forever.
The body image goal doesn't get you that far.
It's the consistency and frequency that's going to get you there. It's not the intensity.
There's no shortcuts to mastery and movement. Destination doesn't change overnight, but your direction will.
The gym is not the place to beat up the body that you hate. It's the place to build the body that you love.
We are the gym that teaches people how to move instead of just exercise, because we believe that health is about performance, not just body image.